All right, we're live, I think. Okay, so yeah, so issue 24687. So it looks like there's no status there. So I'll ping some people. I opened an issue for the summit agenda. I just opened a separate issue because there was an existing issue, and it was a little bit long in the tooth about, when is the right time to have this, who's in and who's out. And it referenced, I think, a doc to get the agenda set up for the summit, Diagnostics Working Group Summit. And so I just created another issue just to track the agenda separately from those other things. So, and hopefully nobody's is too concerned about that. So I don't know if anyone has any updates on getting this agenda. Looks like there's no comments. There's a doc.
I just added best practices to the topics, but I do have to get back to it to think a little bit more about my suggestions to add.
Regarding attendance, should we just edit the description of that other issue 203 ourselves?
I think so. If you were planning to attend, that probably is the best thing to do. I don't know if there's like, it looks like there's a running list. I don't know if that running list is updated from any Me Too's down through the comments or not. But yeah, I think if you're going to attend, go ahead and do that. It looks like there's already some traction in the doc, so I suspect over the next month we can sort of nail down what the formatting and structure of things are. And I think it's 2 days, so there should be plenty of time. What else? Okay, so that's the summit agenda thing. Best practices guide. So I know that there was a doodle on that, and I was not able to attend. My schedule's been pretty tight. So I don't know if anybody was able to attend.
Yeah, I provided an update in the minutes. Basically, there was a meeting held with 4 participants last week. There's minutes, so I pasted in the link. It's 271, the pull request.
Okay.
And really the next steps are to, do an outline and then start filling in the sections. The general agreement was to start with the symptoms and then work from that way outwards. There was some discussion like, should we start with like the deployment environments like cloud or locally or whatever, but in the end I think we agreed we'd start with the symptoms like out of memory and so forth. Try and get and I think Jarish has the action to put together an outline, and then we can sort of break off each trying to pick one of the things in that outline to start working on.
Okay, so it sounds like progress there.
Yep.
That's great. So the working group deep dives, I don't think any update there unless somebody has something to add. I don't have anything at this time. So tiers of support, number 157.
Yeah, I don't have any update on that. I think there has been some work to sort of categorize the current state, and there's issues there. And I think the next step is still to figure out like what's the next concrete thing we can do in terms of improving testing or whatever other things to move those up in the levels. But I haven't had a chance to get back and focus on that yet.
Okay. And then, so I don't know if it's part of that or not. It looks like there's the PR to get Node report in is still open and going through feedback, but it looks like it's a lot closer.
It landed.
Oh, did it land?
Yep. So Node report landed. It's in.
Oh, sweet, dude. I didn't know that.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks to Jarish for a lot of hard work. I think Colin tweeted that there was like 1,000 comments on the issue. I'm not sure it was that many because that seems like a huge number, but I'll it was a large number.
Yeah, well, it went on for months, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
But yeah, so no, that one's one for sure. We can actually kind of bump up in the tiers of support, and that since it's there, it naturally gets tested as part of the regular runs and that kind of stuff.
And so is that tracked as one of the things that you had listed as
one of the tools? I'm pretty sure it's in that list. Yes. So.
Yeah, under other tools. That's good. Fantastic. All right, Async Hooks, number 124. I don't know if anybody has an update on that. I don't. Okay, async context stuff. I have no update there. I hope that at some point I don't know. We'll see. I'm trying to find somebody to do some work with that stuff, and hopefully soon. So trace events number 184.
So
on that.
There's one little update here, which is we have started working on looking into Perfetto as a replacement for the default tracing controller. It didn't go far yet. We're still in the experimentation phase. We would have to get it into V8, as in use it in D8 first. And then Ali and his team will look into how to get that into Node.js, if it proves to be a useful replacement.
Okay.
If I have a question, but only if anybody else don't have anything more.
No, go for it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but there was an issue I think related to worker threads, right? About trace events, just thinking everything was running in the same JavaScript thread. Is that correct?
With worker threads, you have the worker runs on a separate thread, but it's the same process.
Okay, so there was no issue related to trace events.
I'm pretty sure there might be some threading issues with the current implementation because the tracing controller is not particularly thread safe, I think. Ali fixed a bunch of problems there, but it's just workarounds.
Okay. The reason why I ask is because the worker threads just landed without a feature flag that it used to have to start Node with a feature flag to enable worker threads, but you don't have to do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So you think that may impact or that may exacerbate existing threading problems in the tracing library, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I was just concerned if because I remember some people saying previously, or if I recall correctly, that there might be some issues related to that, and I was just wondering, like, if that was still a thing, or now that worker thread was out of no longer behind a feature flag, it might change priorities. I don't know.
So I think Ali definitely fixed the worst issues. It's just that the default tracing controller is not scaled for dealing with long-running processes. So in the long term, we want to switch to something else. In this case, Perfetto. But I think the worst threading issues have been addressed, at least for the medium term.
Good.
Okay. And the last thing here is supporting network inspection. I don't know if anybody has an update on that. But. Yeah.
So this is about adding a network pane to DevTools when it connects to Node.js or something similar, right?
Well, I think it's about, yeah, I mean, that's effectively what I think people want, is they want sort of Node.js network information surfaced through the Chrome debug protocol and then into DevTools or whatever your debugger is. So I think there's a number of open questions. One is, does the existing protocol sort of map cleanly to the kinds of information that Node wants to display, or is it too skewed to the browser, right? So I think that's one sort of thing that needs to be answered here. And then I think the other thing is then, well, great, how do we get network information out from Node through this protocol? And then if that protocol does change, then what needs to be done in, tooling, whether, whatever tooling that is, to sort of display that information.
I see. Yeah, I guess this won't move forward unless somebody just invests time and experiments with this.
Yeah, and Matteo was the one who wanted to kind of revisit it. I think back last year at some point, he was like, "Hey, this is interesting, and it keeps coming up." And so, but yeah,
I think looking in the issue, Eugenio, who I think is the original poster, his last comment, or one of the last comments, is like, "How do I come to a meeting to talk about it?"
Yeah, so the thing is that Eugene no longer works on the DevTools team.
Okay.
So
I was going to say we could wait to get him and then otherwise take it off the agenda, but because I think we need somebody who's going to step up to lead it if it's going to have any progress.
Yeah, so generally I think this is very useful as a feature, but I don't think waiting for Eugenio is going to work out because he doesn't have any stakes in working on this anymore.
Okay, so unless somebody steps up, should we just take it off the agenda until, we can leave it open as an issue until somebody shows some interest?
Yeah, I mean, we can. We might just want to ping Matteo and see where he's at with it.
Sure.
Because he's the one that asked to get it back on.
Okay.
And but I'm fine with doing that. I do think it's, I don't know.
Well, okay, no, if he wants to add it, I mean, maybe just ask him, re-ping him to see if he can come to discuss it at the next meeting.
Yeah, he was on.
Was on?
The last one. At some point, I remember talking with him about it, but it's basically like, this high level, like, yeah, you've got, these different components, and we need to figure out how you flow data across these different things, and what is that data? Is it the right data? What needs to change? And so there's just some work that needs to be done. But we'll ping Matteo about it and see if it can be removed. That was everything on the agenda. Does anybody have anything else?
Yeah, so with the summit away, like only 2 months away, not even.
Yeah,
we probably should think about agenda.
Yeah, so you might have joined after. We talked about briefly.
Okay.
I opened an issue, number 267, to just kind of track the agenda separately from the original thing, since it was, I felt like that would just be a little bit more clear to focus on the agenda. There's the doc that I think you had put together.
Yeah,
It looks like some people are starting to add some things in there about stuff to talk about. And so the next meeting is where's the next meeting? So today's 23rd. So we've got one on the 6th. We've got one on the 20th. And then So it seems like we've got 2 meetings, and then about 2 weeks before the summit, which is the 7th and 8th.
Mm-hmm.
So timeline-wise, it might make sense to try and have something, maybe most of spitballed topics by next week. And then I think people can go in and we can talk about what the right schedule is to make sure these things are addressed.
Yeah, I guess for now, just put whatever you think should be discussed into the unsorted list. And then at some point, we'll go through them and then see which ones are important.
Yeah, so you're thinking I can't remember what we did last time.
Maybe we should make it clear by making a headline that is like ideas for topics, and then we can move it into a proper agenda afterwards.
Yeah, I think that
people feel free to feel more inclined to add something to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we might want to add a link to the past Diagnostics Summit, just as something to remind people what the topics were before.
Mm-hmm.
Good idea.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Just looking for that right now, if I can find it.
Do people know which day they're arriving? Are they arriving the day before or on the day of the first day?
I'm sure I'll have to arrive the day before because it'll be overnight.
Yeah, and I think it's a full day on the 7th and the 8th. So, I mean, I suppose you could arrive in the morning and.
Kind of depends where you're coming from, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You could arrive in the morning and just be like a lump on a log all day or something. And, I don't know. But yeah, it's kind of. Okay.
Okay, so I just added into the doc a reference to the issue with the first agenda.
There's also a recap issue.
So one of you is a skunk and one of you is a chameleon.
Yeah, I don't know how it picks those.
Which.
Okay, yeah, the recap's a good one too.
Yeah, 121 is the planning, and recap is the 162.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, I don't know that. I mean, that one is the just looking at that does make me think, like, do we want to invite anybody from outside the working group to come?
I wouldn't be opposed to that. So
I'm just thinking, like, is there anybody in that area that, like, who we know has a large deployment and who might come and give us their perspective on? Because I think that would be a good addition.
So we definitely do have somebody from Netflix coming, right?
Yep. But I mean, I'm wondering something different this time might be good. Like if there was another company that says, so Netflix could give us an update on like if there's anything new or different, but it'd be interesting if there's even any other companies that are like maybe in Germany or Europe.
Dynatrace used to be was there last time, and I assume that they will be here again because it's even closer for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're actually listed there on the attendees list.
I'm just thinking carving out like some part of the agenda where we have people who are, that is their bread and butter, or somebody from a large deployment to say, hey, here's what we're struggling with or not would be.
I think Uber have an office in Amsterdam, right?
Yeah, they do.
Okay, because like inviting somebody from there, that might be a good idea.
Sure. I mean, if you know people who might be willing to come, that's fine. Yeah.
I don't have anybody in mind yet. I'm just thinking what would make a good content.
Yeah, I mean, the Dynatrace guys should certainly have some perspective of running like APM, and they've got customers that are hopefully running some of this stuff at scale. So if they want to do like a presentation on something like that, I think it would be interesting and relevant. And I don't know if you, Michael, want to reach out to, is it Flarna?
Yeah, they are already on the attendees list.
Yeah.
So they definitely would come. And it's also just like a couple hours drive for them.
Yeah, I wonder if we just want to ping them and be like, hey, do you want to do a talk?
Yeah, we should maybe do that in the issue itself.
Yeah, that might be interesting.
Yeah, go ahead and ping them. And Daniel Kahn, I can't remember what his GitHub handle was the other Dynatrace guy. I don't know if he's still there.
I think he might.
Yes.
But yeah, it might be.
Let's see.
But do you think that their input would cover that aspect that you were thinking about of getting somebody with that? I mean, they don't have a large deployment themselves, but obviously they know of a lot of large deployments. So
right, they might be able to get a customer. I think like a couple wouldn't be bad. Like I would be happy to hear from an hour, 2 1-hour presentations from people who are working, have large deployments, and to talk to us how they debug stuff, right? Because
do we know anyone from Yahoo, Uber, PayPal? If I know they are still using Node on a larger scale.
So I know Fedor from PayPal, but I'm not sure he's still very much involved with Node. At least in the diagnostics area.
Right, but he might be able to find somebody who was. And actually, why don't we reach out to Dan Shaw?
Yeah, sure.
Good idea.
I can do that because Dan now works for PayPal, and we could. I think, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, and likewise, I think Thomas or Stephen, if you guys want to, speak about anything that you guys have, because you guys are both still at Elastic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have, some perspective of like, what customers running Node are experiencing. But I think
we definitely haven't been live as long as Dynatrace have. So Dynatrace does have a lot more Node customers than we do, and therefore also more knowledge when it comes to that.
We do have, like, Kibana team though might have their own insight just on their own experience with Node.
Yeah.
The other one that pops to mind looking at the foundation members is GoDaddy.
GoDaddy as well has a lot of Node things. That's true.
So I'd say
we also we have a person on our team now that actually came from Uber in Amsterdam. I could ask him. He must know some people there that that maybe is doing Node. I could ask him if he could recommend anybody we reach out to.
In my opinion, it would be also useful once invite someone from different language, like Java, which is there forever, to see that what they have, or even someone from the gaming industry. I know that gaming industry has superior tools for postmortem debugging, for example. To see that what others have to have a higher bar for this kind of solution.
That is a really good idea. I think we do that sometimes in. Or just internally in Elastic because we have developers from like agent developers for APM for different languages, right? And I find it super useful to listen to their experience and the tools they have available. And
Yang, any chance that someone at Google? I guess it would be easy to arrange someone from your company, maybe.
So I'm not sure I can get anybody from the Java area. Because they are not on site. and just getting them to come for giving a talk might be difficult. We do have a bunch of people working on C++ though, on site.
That could be interesting, in my opinion.
We actually have a person in Munich.
Yeah, we do have a bunch of C++ developers like who work on LLVM.
But we actually have, from Elastic, we have a Java person in Munich.
That might be nice.
So
yeah,
I could try to ask him. That would be easy. And he's the person in charge of our Java APM agent.
Mm-hmm.
There's also an effort that's going on, and I want to say it's called Open Census, but I might be getting confused because there's a few different competing sort of standards or kind of de facto standard type things for diagnostic tracing data that's cross-language, cross-platform. And I know that the GCP guys are interested in sort of standardizing on that, right? So that as people are building distributed systems in specific cloud environments, so and you've got some piece of an application that's running in Node and some other piece that's running Java, and you're then talking to some blob storage, or you're talking to a database. You can then have all these different components emit log data, and then you can start correlating this data from these different processes on different nodes, potentially different data centers, wherever it may be running, right? And I think it's called Open Census is sort of the variant. There's another one that's escaping me, and I think Open Census is a bit of a variant off of some other thing. I know that GCP guys are interested in sort of standardizing on that, and I know that there's some folks at Microsoft that are working with GCP guys in how to sort of bring that to Azure. I don't know where AWS is with it, but that might be an interesting talk in terms of what are some of the things going on there as well. And so I don't.
Could you, just as an aside,
there is. Sorry.
I was just going to say, Michael, on the side, could you loop me into that discussion? Because I'd be interested to see if IBM's involved in that Open Census initiative already. And
so I just quickly give a. I can just quickly tell there's like 3 different standards out there, or 2.5. So there's open tracing. Open tracing is like this, standard, open standard, obviously. And then there is something called trace context. And then there's open census. And open census is not really a standard per se, but it's done by Google. And it's a little bit more kind of like their own thing. But there is a lot of talk about merging open tracing and open census into like one thing, or better collaboration between the two at least. So that's going on right now actually, and really interesting to follow along. And then there's and then there's trace context. And trace context is a W3C standard, or it's a draft currently. It's not a final yet, but it's about the header formats of taking the trace ID from one service to another service to a third service, and how is both the HTTP header format defined, and how is the binary data format defined. That's called trace context. But they all kind of course, have something to do with each other.
That sounds like an interesting talk, right? Like here's the thing. I think at some point, like, I don't know, and I'm kind of just like talking here because it's like, right, my day job doesn't have any skin in this game anymore. But at some point, it's like if you're running Node applications inside of some of these clouds, right? Then and you're potentially communicating with some legacy stuff that you've got running that somebody wrote 10 years ago in Java or, .NET or whatever it is, right? Like, you need to be able to correlate all of that stuff together. And how do you do that, right? I think is an interesting thing. And it's something that at some point Node is going to have some kind of a perspective or a point of view on. I don't know that it necessarily does today, right? And it would be interesting for somebody, if somebody could actually provide such a, perspective, right? Like, in terms of like, oh yeah, this is interesting runtime information to feed out through this protocol, right? And this is interesting application level information that you'd want to feed out through that protocol. And then you want to start looking at the app and correlating all this stuff and being like, oh yeah, you did X, Y, or Z, and this was some state of, your node process and some interesting stats on that. And, and then you can correlate that with whatever happened in, your database, or correlate it with some other thing that's running somewhere. And that would certainly be an interesting scenario, that if it all kind of worked. And it would be interesting if somebody could kind of like paint a picture of that and how that makes sense across such an environment in context of these open context or open census or open tracing protocols.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and it would be you might spark somebody's interest by having a talk on what they are and bringing us all up to speed.
I can give a talk about that. I'm part of both the trace context and open tracing.
Okay, that'd be good.
Yeah, that would be, I think, super interesting.
Because I think having the larger group understanding that context, because that's part of what we should keep in mind when we're working on different things.
Makes sense. I'll add it to the unsorted agenda list.
In terms of the invited speakers, I think we should probably not like scattergun and say invite a whole bunch of people. We should try and figure out like who would we ask first, and if that doesn't work out, ask the next person down the list and so forth, right?
Yeah, because I think time is limited, and there's going to be a bunch of working. There's probably like, I think last time we maybe had, if I remember correctly, there were like 2 simultaneous like working groups meeting.
Yep.
And I don't know, Yang, like what the facilities, if they support that.
So we do have a larger room, a smaller room, and there's like, well, it's not really a hallway. It's like a niche carved into the hallway that can accommodate like 10 people. And we can also definitely group people into corners of the larger room. So I think we can definitely split up into like 5, 6 groups if necessary.
Okay.
But I think on this topic, it's like we can probably fit in like 1 or 2 presentations, not too many more than that, right? Because we want most of the time to be working sessions or.
Yeah, I would think for like rough planning exercise, that makes sense. Like there would be like, a talk on, it's like a Thursday, Friday, right? So there would be a talk on like Thursday afternoon or something, and a talk on Friday afternoon. And then the other time would be, parallel sessions to go in detail about, some of the other topics or something like that.
We did the talks at the beginning as a kickoff last time, just to sort of like, okay, here's things to think about while you're.
Yeah, in my opinion, that's a great thing to putting them to the beginning, kind of inspiring other people and making the mood for the whole evolving the ecosystem.
That's fine. Yeah.
So like if we could get, Uber to come the first, and they were like the sort of kickoff diagnostics, how we do diagnostics and investigation at Uber or something, that would be an interesting sort of frame. Okay, now we understand what they do. That's some good context for all the other discussions. So I mean, it sounds who was it who said they might be able to reach out to Uber?
Sorry, go ahead.
I have so one of the people on my team used to work in the Amsterdam office. So I could ask him if he knows anybody who could be like yeah, who would be interesting to invite?
Because I'd suggest maybe, you know, we could ask them first. Then if that doesn't work out, I could ask Dan about PayPal. I think the open census, open tracing, trace context, that makes sense to be like one of the working sessions. Regardless, like I don't know if we want to fill one of the, if we have say 2 slots for somebody outside, whether we want to fill that with one of them or make it one of the parallel tracks. I don't know.
I mean, I think it has potential to be a informative talk for, I think, a broader audience.
Yeah, true.
To a working session of
Yeah.
like, how do we solve this? And
Agreed.
so, but it might make sense inside that doc to just, you know, have like a thing on talk, you know, potential topics for presentations and list it as one of those. And if, you know, for whatever reason, it's like it doesn't fit as a presentation, you can have a working group session on it.
Yeah, there is already a section for that, so I just moved them into it.
And what about, there was also some talk about if we should invite somebody from another language and they could talk about how they are doing diagnostics in their language. Is that still interesting, or is that too much to add?
I think that's interesting. You know, I don't know where, like, I think it's interesting. Yang offered C++ stuff. You know,
I wonder if we could do that in one of our regular meetings.
We could. I wonder if what's more interesting is the question of like, hey, how do you do it at scale, right? And, you know, there's this sort of question of like, yeah, you've got, you know, a bunch of, you know, you've got, you know, like hundreds of millions of, you know, clients running some version of V8. Right? What are you doing to get diagnostic data about those things, and how do you assess the quality of V8, right? And what are you looking for? What are the systems that are in place to sort of enable that, right? That's super interesting, I think. It's probably at a scale that isn't interesting to everybody, right? But it might be something that, you know, from a Node perspective, you can take away some insights from that.
So I can definitely give some insights on how Chrome does it. I mean, it uses V8 and it's on a large scale. And I mean, it doesn't really perfectly map into running servers, but I'm sure we can share some things that might be interesting.
I think that's an interesting topic to keep going on beyond just this summit as well.
Probably I can find someone from Netflix about Java, but I'm not sure that I can convince them to fly to Munich. But if it's more like a diagnostic call or
right,
like, or like something later in the area, then I think we can do that. Because the idea came from that we are working with the team performance engineering. And as you know, Java is the main language for Netflix. So it's kind of frequent that we see what other teams has in the company, and we are jealous. So
right.
So what are you jealous of?
It's lots of small things. It's yeah.
I mean, and I work in the team that builds IBM's Java as well. So I think we could getting people to that meeting. Or, you know, whether we want to have like one of our, if we can only have 2 external presentations, whether we want to have one of those 2 being on Java versus Node when we're together, I'm not as sure, but like doing something in a future meeting seems like a no-brainer to me.
I agree with that as well, right? I think some of it is, it's like at some point, you know, hopefully there's a bunch of stuff that are proposed agenda topics. Yep. And it's a question of like going through and figuring out how they fit, And once you do that, you'll know if you've got, room for, 2 presentations or 4, or maybe you can do a couple of, like, I don't know, lightning talks, or like 15-minute, I'm going to run through something really quick. And it's like you've got, once I think you see the topics, you can start figuring out what fits and what doesn't for the summit. And certainly things that don't fit the schedule, I think can get, we can do on a call at some later date. Right. I think these are all like super interesting topics.
I'm just thinking though that like for inviting people or hoping to get somebody to travel there to talk to us from outside the group, they need advance notice, and that'll take time to line up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree 100% with what you just said. Like if it's people who are going to be there anyway and who can talk about different topics, then yeah, let's just do that through the agenda bashing.
Okay.
So maybe it sounded like Thomas could reach out to Uber, because if they're close enough, maybe that's the closer somebody is, the easier it is. I think that might be interesting. So if my suggestion might be Thomas reaches out to Uber first. If that looks promising, we pursue that. If not, I could try PayPal through Dan. And I don't know, or if somebody has the gaming industry or other ones that we think are really hot, or really good candidates, we could change that order. But from the ones we've listed, that seems like a good order.
I will ask Julian about the gaming industry, because he worked for Ubisoft. So probably he has some connections, but it's more like Canada. So we will see.
Okay. So does it make sense the very first thing for Thomas to reach out to Uber?
I think yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll do that.
So yeah, if you can do that, let us know if it's looking promising, and then we'll move on to the next list if not.
Okay.
All right. Is that everything from everybody, or is anything else? All good?
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
See you all later.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Yeah.